Welcome to the Mytra Consulting Webinar Series, where industry insight meets practical strategy. At Mytra Consulting, we help organizations navigate growth, innovation, and transformation with confidence. In each session, we bring you expert perspectives, real-world solutions, and forward-thinking conversations designed to help leaders make smarter decisions and drive meaningful results. Thank you for joining us. Now, let's get started. I'm Chad Nicken, the Chief Marketing Officer from Mytra, and I'll be serving as your moderator for today's webinar. We're here to explore a topic that's generating a lot of conversation across the industries, and that is AI, artificial intelligence. More importantly, the real practical impact that it can have on businesses, particularly in the telecom and utility sectors. Now, while AI is often talked about in broad terms, one of the key themes that we'll touch on today is that AI is not one of those one-size-fits-all solution. The organizations seeing the greatest success with AI are those that are thoughtfully designing and implementing AI strategies tailored to their unique operations and the different challenges they face and growth objectives. So before we dive in, I want to remind everyone that we do have an interactive session, and we encourage you to submit your questions. You can use the chat feature throughout the webinar located at the bottom of your screen, and we'll make time at the end to address as many as possible with a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. If something looks pertinent at that time to that specific slide that is on during the presentation, then we'll kind of ask that at that time if that's something that's prevalent at that time. If not, we'll take care of all that at the end of the webinar. Right now, it is my pleasure to introduce our presenter today, Michael Rickberg. Michael is a seasoned technology strategist and executive advisor with deep expertise in innovation, growth planning, and new product development. Over the course of his career, he has worked with organizations ranging from startups to Fortune 50 companies, helping them navigate complex technology landscapes and bring transformative solutions to market. His experience includes leadership roles with companies you've heard of, like Dell Technologies, Oracle, and Citrix, just to name a few. He played a key role in driving strategic innovation and market disruption with those companies. He brings a unique ability to connect emerging technologies like AI to real-world business outcomes, making him the perfect guide for today's discussion. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Michael.
Greetings, Chad. Michael Rickberg again here, coming from Norfolk, Virginia. As Chad mentioned, I've had a great deal of experience in the technology industry that spans over 40 years. And in those 40 years, my responsibility has been basically to build business cases for new products that have leveraged new innovations that have often been disruptive in nature. And with that, what I'm going to cover with you today are a variety of topics that start with the fact that AI is no longer just this side bet that enterprises are taking. This is becoming a core, fundamental, transformational change that is about building products, refining how customers interact with things, making decisions, and improving operational efficiencies in general. So things I'll cover today have to do with the market trends and what direction they're going in, size of the market opportunity that we're looking at here in 2026, some of the technology things at a high level, because this is a short webinar. What we're not going to do is take a deep engineering dive into all of this. We're going to talk about use cases and in particular apply how that can achieve some of the results for the telco industry and how you can get your AI plan started. What are the things that you can be starting to do to help get things in order, and how can we help you potentially here at Mytra? So with that, let's start off with the really big numbers, and that has to do with where our projections coming from. In this case, this is coming from Gartner in February, and they're talking about this getting to an incredibly large market. And you can see here at over $6 trillion of IT spend in general. The remarkable part of this is that over 42% of that spend is being allocated towards AI infrastructure. And of the AI infrastructure, you can see that there's a tremendous amount of opportunity in the communication services. So why is that such a big deal? In this case, translating that $1.3 trillion into something for AI is over 22% of that. So in this case, the ability for data to be moved is a crucial artery for all of this to be taking form. So AI is going to rely on data. Data has to be put in the right place for the processing to occur. And we're going to get into a bit more of where that needs to be and why connectivity, the artery of communication, is going to be so critical to all of this, because the data has to be moved. It's not going to just reside in one place like you might see potentially with just a database. This is going to involve a great deal of distributed computing. Edge computing is another way of putting that. And in these cases, what we can see as an opportunity for the telco industry is how they can optimize the data pipeline. How can we see that these central offices are becoming AI hubs? And I'll get into a little bit of that as we go. But I thought you'd find this an interesting quote from Tech Radar over the past 60 days that talks about just how important the telco industry is in transformation, because you've got so much information about your customers, about your network, about what the amount of data is that's getting moved, and how you can help your customers. So with that, I'm going to transition into a little bit of what it is I'm sure everybody can appreciate, and that is that we are, yes, in a bit of a hype cycle, okay? And this is a Gartner famous way that they do this representation for all sorts of different technologies, emerging, mature, et cetera. And we are certainly in a state of a lot of these things coming out. But what is very, very different this time around is that, unlike the dot-com bubble, is that these are being led by the very large companies. Certainly, there's a mixture of startups that are coming out, and I have had the opportunity to be seeing a lot of those very, very creative startups in this space too. But this is coming from a large number of companies, and you can't at this point pick up probably a trade journal or even a news publication without seeing AI being referenced for Google or Microsoft or Mytra, Meta rather, as part of the system that's creating all of the incredible changes that we have coming on here. So what this is just showing you here, also in color codes, you can see little white circles and blue circles, and what those are showing you here is in the white blobs that those are going to mature within the next 2 years, and the blue ones within 5 years. So we're talking about a time frame that is very, very rapid in terms of the evolution that's occurring here. I'm going to switch to a little bit of some vernacular just to make sure that we're on the right page as far as how some of these technologies work. And what you're used to probably seeing if you've used these tools yourself are these chat-oriented, chat GPT type tools where you can plug in something like a question or ask it to analyze an image or take a look at a report and help you synthesize that. All very valuable, and I'd be remiss if I left out coding as an example of where these chat type infrastructure items are improving productivity for people who are doing programming, or for people even that don't do programming as a core training. And that is still very, very important, but a very important transformational element of what's going on here is about AI in the agent space, or agentic AI. And what we're talking about here are things that reside on systems or machines that are talking to each other. And they don't always have a human involved, but they can and may need to be for the purpose of checkpointing execution steps. But the whole point of this is to take steps automatically and chain them together in a way that is very instant in terms of being able to react to things. So think about a valve that might be stuck open, and rather than having a trouble ticket gets issued and somebody having to take a look at the trouble ticket and then respond to something like a valve being open and dispatching something, all of those can be time compressed into doing things very, very, very rapidly. I'm using just some examples here of things that might be also very relevant to your customers if you're connecting to their systems, which may involve workflow of things like inventory, and you're getting low on something and processing a purchase order, and the purchase order needs to be sent to your supplier, and the supplier has to respond with, when is that going to come? All of those things right now take often a lot of manual intervention, and these are things that can be improved upon using these new technologies or agentic AI as a mechanism. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that as we go. Let's talk a bit about also, in just this next slide, on the velocity. And that is just to give you some idea on the left side how fast on a logarithmic scale here, we're talking about the improvements in the performance that these things are taking. And what you're seeing here is improvements in accuracy, improvements in the time to render the results. And all of this is improving itself because AI is improving AI. And you're seeing this incredible hockey stick on the left of this chart showing just how fast this is happening. And these updates are coming out weekly, sometimes daily, in terms of the improvements that are all occurring as part of this very, very high velocity change. So this is incredible if you look at this over the long term through 2030 about how much faster all of these things will start to occur more and more. And all of this is improving efficiencies because it's a necessary thing for keeping the cost down, for improving the power efficiencies. And that is part of the overall market that we're looking at here. So another point of evidence, and I'll get through some of these very quickly and get to some of the other examples. But look, we're like in the previous slide, seeing an improvement in what it costs to do this. Now, we're talking about a lot of money being spent by vendors like Microsoft or AWS on buying the immense amounts of GPU farm servers, but that's not the only place that the improvements are occurring. They're occurring in the models that take less and less tokens. And the tokens are an example of a unit of measure for how long it takes for something to occur and how expensive that token takes for executing an AI event is something that's getting less and less expensive every single month. And that's important because it's reducing the amount of power, it's helping the economics of this whole space. And the whole system of efficiency is, again, part of what's occurring here very, very quickly. Let's look at this too from a standpoint of how fast this change has been occurring. Just leave it at this point. Is in this case, on the left side, the vector here is how long it has taken major adoption to occur. In this case, the measure of number of years it's taken to get to 75% adoption of a particular new technology. And it's not surprising to see some of these things took a long time when we had less technology to help. But if you look at where we're in some of the later parts of the technology evolution, there have been some of the things here that took 10 or 20 years to get to that 75% adoption rate. What you're seeing is a projection that generative AI, I'll use that as a general way of saying AI, is expected to be taking hold of 75% in general use of only about 5 years. So this is a key point, and the key idea here is that there is an incredible amount of velocity in this AI adoption cycle. So where are we seeing examples where people that are involved in helping the AI adoption occur that may not be operating in a public cloud environment are going to help in distributed environments? Now, I'm going to pick this just as an example, but there are many other industries that can be equally a part of this spectrum of where the spending is occurring and why it's optimizing, in this case, agriculture. So growing things, farming things, thinking about new ways that things can be harvested, weed treatment. All these things are already in the works. John Deere is a perfect example of some of this advanced agriculture where they're creating autonomous vehicles. They're out there harvesting the fields. They're tilling the fields. They are doing precision insecticide control, weed control. And all of this is happening through an AI process that has a tremendous amount of opportunity, not just for the agriculture space, but who's going to connect all of these systems to the necessary fast interactions that are required, because you're not going to have time to go back to a full-blown public cloud environment. You may need to have this operate with high-speed connectivity to something that's very local, very distributed. Edge computing is where this starts to become a critical part of the infrastructure, and the ability to help people with these connections is going to be a very, very important part. Think about other industries that are very distributed too, that don't have central locations. They're not just urban facilities, but people that do retail, manufacturing are just some examples of where there is going to be a need for an important artery to connect all of these things together and to help them operationalize the result. Let's talk a little bit next about where these systems operate and just contrast a bit of why they're all part of the system. And that has to do with some of these data center topologies. If we start at the top, we look at this central data center. These are where you're hearing most of the big brands like Microsoft or Google or Microsoft and AWS participate in this space. And they are certainly vital to this as companies look at where they're going to build these large language models. But after large language models get to a place where they're operating on real-time data and the inferencing step starts to occur, they need to have things that are going to act on those in a more distributed manner. So edge computing and edge locations are going to be connected through LANs for local connections to the systems that are responsible for the interactions with machines or with people or transactions. And the edge is going to be necessarily connected as well to a core data center. So that leads to this concept of a hybrid computing topology where the highest growth is occurring. The most prevalent situations are going to be needing to have mini data centers. And those mini data centers are going to range anywhere from a few servers to something that might occupy a small building. But in other words, this is a place for the hub and spoke interactions to occur where the actions are responsive in the close proximity to where it's occurring. And then there's a core data center that might be responsible for helping to manage the iterations that occur for these large language models. The other is this data sovereignty, and the concept here is to make sure that people, especially in regulated industries or people who are looking to protect the IP of what they're doing with the infrastructure, is cordoned off from where it might be involved with other systems. You don't want your data possibly being used as an ingredient in a large language model that's being publicly created. You may want your own large language model or small language model, etc. But the whole idea here is for you to come up with some way of controlling that. The telecommunications industry has the ability to participate in controlling this and helping the customers with navigating where the data is going to get put and where it's not going to get put. In this case, I'm giving you some idea from IDC's Futurescape that they're indicating here by 2030 that over 60% of the manufacturing will leverage AI, and that they will have their own models that they're going to require to be hybridized. That's because they may also be building their factories in rural locations as opposed to dense urban locations. And that all of this is about trying to help them with their operational efficiency. So this is maybe pulling it together and looking at it from the standpoint of how are telcos able to help monetize this edge and how can they participate in this new frontier of using AI to optimize the businesses. And in this case, looking at it from the standpoint of your ability to look at it as you're the ones in contact with your customers. You're the ones connecting that artery to the infrastructure that they're operating in their particular location, whether it's a factory or the agriculture situation or retail, but being able to bring to them the right bandwidth at the right time with the low latency connections that are required so that they're not starving the activity that needs to be taking place in real time. So this is an opportunity for you to consider also maybe having a mini AI infrastructure in your pathway, meaning that you've got a connection. How about putting the connection, connecting it to something that is hyper local to where you're geographically servicing those customers, or creating a partnership with those that are building those mini data centers. And these are starting to blossom all over the place because not every place is going to have the ability to build major hyperscale data centers. And this is becoming even more and more of an issue as power and cooling becomes a bit of a contest in various communities. So these mini data centers are going to start to blossom and they're going to need connectivity. So this is an opportunity. And I use this quote here from one of the folks that runs the telecommunications segment for Red Hat about where is it that there are opportunities for the telco industry to be taking advantage of the things that I'm pointing out here. The edge computing, the sovereignty of the data, and being able to pull together a package that you can offer to your customers and helping them think about things like, hey, what if I can offer you an engineered system that's got capabilities of communicating to what you're trying to get done in a real time and adjust it as needed, and will create prices that are based on what you need, but when you need it, and making it dynamic as opposed to static and saying you're signing up for a particular bandwidth. What about if it's really dynamically able to allocate what you need when you need it, and then having something of a burst and then maybe a quiet period where it's less expensive. Some of the other examples for us to talk about here, again, are top ROI use cases, but this is a little more focused on internal use of what AI could be doing for you. So think about what you could be doing for helping the back office things that need to be done still. And yes, it may be less in this case at 33% of a ROI perspective, but if you can help your IT department respond to activities that may involve what you're doing to update your equipment, your networking equipment, your desktops, your servers, that can be certainly helpful. Your HR processes, how do you help maybe operationalize some of the things that you have to get done every day with people and the processes of interacting with them. Legal is a big area for optimization. Think about contracts that need to be reviewed and updated and processed. Those things, again, are ripe for opportunities. But you go all the way up here to the top where about 50% of that ROI use cases are about how you can create what I was just mentioning, some AI-powered networking optimizations. That way you can help not only make the best use of what you already own, but how can you help your customers with a better result as well. Predicting failures and looking at how can you take a event, something out of the telemetry index of things that are going on, and be able to detect that you've got something that's going on that needs some attention and getting in front of it. Therefore, perhaps improving your service level agreements and also maintenance and things that might be necessarily dispatched, and perhaps having somebody that can be sent out automatically based on what you're already doing. But rather than it being in a spreadsheet, think about how that could be automating what you're doing. And in general, the ability to streamline workflows. So if you do consider a way for you to look at opportunities for AI, where are you doing things that take multiple steps, that have different people that need to react to the things that are going on? It may not necessarily say don't take them out, but rather take steps that you can help automate all of those as you go. So let me just leave you with this final thought, and that is not everybody is going to act on all of this instantly. And certainly there's some understandable aspects of being conservative if you want to make sure that things are really firm before you are investing heavily in what's going on in this AI space. But the whole idea of this chart is to look at yourself and say, where am I in my AI personality? And what kind of behavior should I perhaps be at least starting to look at when I'm looking at this space? Now, I'll pause for a second and say part of looking at this AI area is the talent curation. And that is that you're going to have a different way people have to think about what this tool can do, but becoming aware that that is a learning exercise at all levels, executive all the way down to the people that are doing the work, to embrace this and become aware of how it works and starting to create some training programs for doing this AI-oriented work. What I'm also highlighting here for you is which of these four quadrants you're in is fine, but hopefully you're not getting stuck in the middle where you're going, I don't know if this is real. I don't know if this is going to be a bubble, that this isn't something that's going to fade away, that this is something that will become part of your work, and that as a certainty. Because what's going to happen, even if you don't implement AI as part of your infrastructure, you will have the partners that are upstream or downstream from you that are going to implement AI, and you're going to be part of connecting to that. They're going to be asking you for things like, can you create an agent for me to communicate back and forth to you? For, you could fill in the blank. It could be billing. It could be procurement. It could be something you're doing with the upstream telecommunications industry players that you work with. And these are the things that are going to come your way, regardless of whether you put it into your business directly or not. So I'm just making sure that you don't get stuck, that you think about where are we and where can we go with this, and that we're here to help you with some of that thinking. So these are just some things to think about. Look at your opportunities for operational efficiency. So even if this is something that you want to do to help get some of the manual processes worked out, I would also strongly encourage, and this comes from me being very well trained in product management and product strategy, is about understanding the use cases of your customers. We can't anticipate all of them when we're talking to you, but you're in touch with your customers and you know who it is that's out there that is in need of something that's likely to be a way that they're looking to either profit from or improve their business. So look at this as an opportunity to engage with them and go, what are you doing with your AI plans? And look at what else you own. You have a tremendous database of telemetry information about what your customers are doing, about where your systems are, about where your wires are laid, and what is it that you can do with that incredibly proprietary information to create something that would be very, very, very strong, because strong data, curated data, accurate data is the foundation for strong AI implementations. And you've got a tremendous opportunity with what you have. The other is just, again, this is to the previous slide, embrace the change. Look at this as an experiment. An experiment doesn't need to be, I'm going to put a multi-million-dollar budget towards this. Experiment can be putting a group of people together in a conference room and going through some whiteboard ideas. What ifs? What are things that we could be doing that follow some of the things I've gone through here today? Create some form of education to help foster, hey, I've got an idea. This is a good place where we could put something that might improve the friction that might be going on out there, and foster some of these innovation opportunities for you. There are, I think, some people in your organization that would love to help think about this as a friction point. This is a really big pain for me or for our customers, and how can we improve that? And then create an AI center of excellence. So think about creating a group of people that are there to help with this being something you're going to build upon. And that this is also about remaining competitive. The AI area is going to be about causing, frankly, some disruptions for those that are going to embrace this. And there are going to be, unfortunately, some people that fall out because they're not embracing this. They're not looking at this as a form of a way to keep not only growing the business and the revenue, but also to be remaining competitive versus other alternatives that might be out there. The other is, as I mentioned earlier, understand your ecosystem, because they will be pulling you into what it is that they're doing, and that they will ask you to be participating, is a projection that I will give you. So I would love to hear some of your thoughts, your questions about what is it that these things did to potentially stimulate your thinking, and maybe get to some of the questions that we can help answer. So with that, the floor is yours on how is it that we might be able to now continue the discussion.
So, Michael, on that note, as we wait for some of these questions to come in, when you were discussing some of the different things about each company's information that they have, that is exclusive to each company, and so we hear the old saying, "You garbage in, garbage out." So in AI, you're only as good as the information that you provide to it. But does AI go in and if it sees information that it knows, even if we've input that information into it, it knows that it's false, can it eliminate that? Or is it going to go and operate basically on what is provided to it?
Yeah, so let me give you an example, and this comes from working at a number of the technology supplier companies, and they create new products all the time, and they have older ones that still are out there, and customers are using them. And marketing material was created for the old products, marketing materials created for the new products, but oftentimes the old stuff, even if it's a decade old and no longer being sold to anybody, and may even be end of life, that documentation often is populated on either databases that people are using for keeping track of content, or they're even on your website. And you ask a question about which product should I use, and it's fed into, as an example, an AI engine to be able to answer that question. And it's pulling from information that could be a decade old, or it could be from the brand new product you just launched last week. It will be important to have a way of curating the content. So the short answer is it will not detect that it's old. Now, if you put a way of framing what it is that's pulling the data into the proper way of structuring what you're doing, including something like an agent that's given a program to look at what is going on, but I only want to look at the data that's been generated in the last minute, as an example of, I want to know where the problem's coming from, then there's a way to deal with what you're asking there, Chad. But I wanted to kind of give you a bookend of, you can pull old things in and it not necessarily answer the question. You can pull the new things in, and you can be also careful about what it is you do to scrub your data. But the data quality is a key part of making sure that these practices don't create, unfortunately, the hallucinations that you may hear that term used, hallucinations being incorrect answers, and that you need to make sure the right data is in the proper database for your AI system to work correctly.
So one of the other things that you were discussing when talking about the advantages that AI provides to telco, and also getting good ROI through your AI, you were talking about utilizing that for your network. So let's say, for example, and so if all of a sudden at 3 a.m. AI notices there could be an issue forthcoming, and can it go through and notify the operations department?
Yeah, and that's a fairly basic one. A more advanced example might be that you're trying to proportion what the network availability is, and rather than statically assigning a particular bandwidth to somebody that's not using it, having a way for you to do a little bit of some kung fu with changing what it is you're allocating to your customers based on what they need, and to be a little bit more tuned into whether you need the V8 kind of capability right now, or whether you're statically assigning that V8 to everybody. I'm using just a coarse example, but this is all part of helping to turn it, instead of, hey, I got to react to something, the system already having the proper understanding and looking at every single customer and every single connection as independently part of feeding the data system about what is it that the patterns see, and helping to self-tune all of that, so that you're not looking at this as a spreadsheet exercise and going, what do I do tomorrow? It's able to deal with some of that in real time.
From Kevin, how does a telco get started? Where does AI expertise come from? And do they need to hire an AI expert to help the company?
So that's where I go back to the previous kind of bullet list here, and that is, if I look at this as a first, let's have a general understanding, and I hope I've helped with that today in terms of at least a high level direction. But getting a team together and saying, look, what we're going to do is allocate a certain amount of time as part of our strategy setting direction, and start to put together a team. And that team will be the ones responsible for helping to curate what's necessary for you to identify use cases, the education point I made here too, so that you do acquire it. Now, where can you get it? There's a lot of the material that's available online, and even free, that can be applied. Now, a lot of the material is about creating AI systems, so that's one thing. And if you've got developers, they should definitely be paying attention to where they can get the training on this. There's some follow-up we can provide you on how that can be obtained. And I can guide on some of the things too that are just about, what is AI? How does it work? What are the different models? How do I sort out whether I should be using cloud, or whether I should be using something from Anthropic or other platforms that are part of the equation? But I wouldn't even start with some of the complex parts, but rather start to think about what the use cases are. Start to think about where the friction points are Two, begin to think about a prioritization and put a key metric next to that. Where am I going to get the best ROI if I do something about categories A, B, C, D, whatever number you come up with, and think about where are they creating the most amount of operational friction, customer friction. How can I turn this into something monetizable? So you might even create a T-chart. Where is this going to help us in terms of, reducing something, whether it's friction or processing time, et cetera? And then another part of the T-chart, where can we turn this into something that's incremental revenue for us and helping you increase your business opportunities out there? And there might be even a third, which is maybe who are the ecosystem partners that I can pull in that would be helpful for me to use and engage with, because I'm sure you've got people that are upstream from you if you're in the network that are using the AI systems. They may help you too with, hey, there's already what we've learned. I'm giving you some ideas, right? But plenty of opportunity for discuss more and more of that with you.
Yeah, and that was one of the other questions from him is, do they partner with a company like Calix, or and the other comment he made was that they may agree with what you're saying, but how do they build the strategy?
Yeah, and I'll go back to some of my core learnings and doing product strategy for some of the companies that I've had to convince the CEOs of even some of the largest companies. And that is, you need the sponsorship from the executive level. They have to look at this and say, this is not a threat, it's an opportunity. We have to look at this as, how do I get them to potentially look at the opportunities? And that goes back to what I was just saying. If you come in and so I just like to do something with AI, I don't think that's a good way to start. But instead, look, here are some things that we've been thinking about that are areas that could really use some improvement, or here's some additional ways that we could earn incremental revenue. But how could we do that? And let me explain what we thought would be a good use case for good ROI on using AI. And that way you turn it into not the technology first, but the what do I get as an outcome first.
We have on staff at Mytra a lot of folks that can go through and really help you uh, customize exactly what you're looking for in AI. So you're not going out and getting a partner and overpaying for a partner that's going to help you along in those areas. So you want to do things that's really going to customize and tailor to what your exact needs are. What are you looking to get from AI, and how that's going to help your business? And that's what our consultants at Mytra Consulting can do is help you do that, so you don't get into the situation where you're overspending and not getting exactly what you need from AI to help your company. It doesn't matter if you're a 6-person operation at a small ILEC, or if you are a 200 employee company that covers the entire state or a certain portion of the state. So I think that's why it's good to really take the time and look and see exactly where you need AI assistance, and how we can kind of help you do that, and keep yourself from spending a lot of money that you don't need to spend, and getting the best ROI for what you're wanting.
And we can also help you understand some of the things going on in the ecosystem too. I just give you one example, and that was if you said, well, I like the concept here of you're thinking about a mini AI data center that is only maybe a few servers that could help with one of your customers that's in need of something that's got to be in proximity. Would you start with buying the servers, or would you start with buying something that had more of the full package put together? And just to use an example, Google Distributed Cloud has come up with exactly that, where they've taken all the software stack elements, they've taken all of the necessary partner ingredients, whether that's Dell, HP, Lenovo, et cetera. They put all of the software into the package that comes with the Google Distributed Cloud. They've layered on top of that their AI model for the ability to implement this, and then have a way for it to be delivered in a way that's very dense, very compact, edge-oriented, and helps with something like that. So these are just some examples that I'm giving you, but I hope I'm at least stimulating some of your creativity.
And as we talk about that, one of the other trends that we've seen, especially over the past year, that's really ramped up, is a lot of companies actually having AI departments. and that is what they're responsible for, that portion of their company. Is this something that each company should factor into planning for near future or 5 years down the road? Or is this something that folks need to look at now? And whether it be one person that's responsible or you have a team, what's your thoughts on that?
I mean, look at first at how much of an appetite already is there, and if there is a justifiable department to create, definitely. But even if it's, I want to make sure I identify, or I am the participant on this particular webinar session, I am the champion for helping to get this off the ground, then that can even be the starting point. Oftentimes, though, people need to be studying the facts and how to contextualize that within the business that you're in, and making sure that you can tell a story that is explaining how this particular new form of technology is going to help with whichever of these use cases or situations that we've been through today can become a real thing for you. Sometimes it takes a little bit of repeating what you're saying. It takes some good storytelling to explain that this is not a threat, but rather an opportunity. And I have had a great deal of experience in doing this all the way up to some of the most serious CEO levels in the companies that I've worked for, about helping them see opportunities that they were not previously aware of. And it doesn't mean that they're inexperienced or stupid people. It's just that they may not have the same perspective, because they're worrying about day-to-day things, and this is not where they're focused on today.
And that's kind of exactly where, especially at the CEO level, you have so many different things and so many irons in the fire at one time. And that's where we can kind of step in and be able to assist you and assist someone if you're wanting to put someone in charge of AI for your company, for example. We can help coach that person, teach that person what they need to look for, what kind of information they need to provide to AI, to where it'll really benefit your company.
I didn't say it before, but I'll translate the talent part to another one, which is culture. And that is that there is also a cultural adjustment to what is it that's going on here. And that's where we can discuss some of the ways that could be concerning, or how to mitigate that too.
Okay. Any other questions? Feel free to put it into the chat. As Michael has up on the screen right now, there's a couple of email addresses there. You can get a hold of Michael or our CEO, Sam Sluice, and get in touch with them, and they can provide information for you. And we can really start to help tailor and customize information for you, and the best way for you to let AI work for you and work in a positive manner to help you with your company.
Indeed. And we thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Again, thank you, everyone, for participating and being involved today in our webinar. And we look forward to hearing from you. And if you have any questions, again, feel free to reach out to us. Visit our website at mytraconsulting.com. Thank you for joining us for this edition of the Mytra Consulting Webinar Series. We hope today's discussion provided valuable insight and actionable ideas you can apply within your organization. At Mytra Consulting, we're committed to helping leaders turn challenges into opportunities and strategy into success. Be sure to stay connected for future webinars, and until next time, thank you for being part of the conversation.